Surprise visits are a hard no for me. Apparently that makes me entitled. My mother has always had a hard time with boundaries. Growing up, she was fond of telling me it was her room because it was her house and she could come and go as she pleased and snoop through my space at will. Same with my car or my phone or anything else. No matter if I was paying for it with my money or not, she had rights to everything. After I got married and moved across the country, she followed a year later to be close in case I needed her. She settled in a town about an hour away, and I saw her a few times a month. She was generally a good grandmother, very involved, and nobody could say she didn't love my daughter a ton. She was given a key to my house for various reasons and didn't abuse it too much. But she had a hard time recognizing that I was an adult and made the rules for my own child, not her. Mild things like wanting to hand feed my 7-year-old and telling me I should allow things that I did not, arguing with me in front of her about my rules, that kind of stuff. After I separated from my ex-husband and moved into my own house with my daughter, she was again given a key for emergencies, and this is when she started to cross some lines. She'd go shopping and drop things off at my house, still an hour away from her own house, and just leave bags of things in various places. She's always been a bit of a compulsive shopper and if I'm being honest, but these things were usually useful. Cases of paper towels, bottles of laundry detergent, piles of conditioner. That kind of thing. But she'd just show up unannounced and leave things in my house. Usually in my, unfinished, basement floor. The basement flooded every time it rained for a half hour, and these things frequently got wet or ruined. I asked her to stop multiple times because I was tired of throwing away soaked rolls of toilet paper, but she continued doing it the whole time I lived there. Frustrating. Then I moved back across the country. She again came with me, actually living in my house for a few months until she could find her own. This was a disaster. Her old space invading behavior from my childhood came roaring back. She'd barge in my bedroom and bathroom without knocking. She'd argue with me about my parenting and openly disparage me to my child when I wasn't around. She'd buy 15 bottles of dishwashing liquid because they were on sale and get angry when I told her I didn't need them. I asked her to escalate her move out for the sake of our relationship. She found her own place but kept the key to my house. Her random drop-ins increased to multiple times a week. I'd come home to whatever random haul she bought that day just sitting on my table, or she'd need to borrow a carving knife and just let herself in while I was at work to grab it. I'd be in the shower and get out to find her in my kitchen, having not gotten an answer when she knocked, so just letting herself in with her key. I asked her to stop several times. I don't like unannounced visitors and I hate knowing someone was in my house while I was not there. She continued unabated. She let herself in at one point and went through my daughter's things, which prompted my daughter to ask me if she could confront her grandmother and ask her not to do that again. My mother went ballistic and said she'd give the key back but never did. She continued to show up randomly, but now saying she knew she should have called first and just forgot. My daughter and I moved again last summer. I was adamant my mother not be given a key to this house or the security code. She has continued to show up randomly. My so opened the door a few times, mostly because he isn't as good at hiding as my daughter and I are. If he's not home, we don't answer. She showed up unannounced last week with stuff for Valentine's Day. I work from home so I was here, I was on a conference call so did not go to the door. My so happened to be home and opened it for her, so she came in and chatted for 10 minutes and then left. This was the last straw for me. I'm over these surprise visits, especially when I'm working and my bosses can hear my dogs going nuts because someone new is here. So I text her and tell her for the 100th time to stop. I don't care what the occasion is or what she just had to drop off, stop showing up at my house unannounced. This is a boundary she needs to respect. And she loses her mind. I'm a controlling, entitled brat who can't tell her what to do. She was just trying to do something nice for Valentine's Day. She hopes I have a child so hateful and mean one day. I can bet my sweet she won't do anything else for me, ever. She's having surgery next week and needed to talk about it with me. She has a very busy schedule that day and lots of places to go, so that's why she couldn't call or text me first. She planned on just leaving the candy on the front porch, but my so opened the door so it's his fault. And on and on and on. I finally told her I wouldn't be reading or responding any further. She responded with good. The silence these last 10+ days has been golden. But I feel like the teenager in a horror movie who mistakenly thinks the axe murder is gone, only for them to pop out of the closet later. Story 2. It's a shared birthday the fuck you Larry story. Not everything was entitlement, but at the end of the relationship, he seemed to feel entitled to my affection, and also sorry if this feels jumbled, I will at least try to keep it in chronological order. So I'm an adult now and have since gone no contact with my bio dad's, Larry, side of the family. My parents got divorced when I was in preschool because he thought it would be smart to sleep with the moms of the kids he would take me and my brother to have playdates with. She caught on after the fact that he'd refused to take her with to the birthday parties. Her and us went to live with our grandma and great-grandma, and he got to keep the house and dog. The reasons were because when the divorce was going on he decided to stop making payments thinking she would try and take it. Funny thing was she hated that house and never wanted him to buy it, so he ended up losing the house and had to move into a SHD apartment downtown with a dog that wasn't house-trained, which my mom also hated. Throughout my childhood he would make the attempt to be the favorite parent by spending all his cash taking us to zoos and museums and stuff, but honestly while the experiences themselves were fun he didn't really take the time to build a relationship during those custody weekends. Looking back there was also a level of favoritism as he would buy him all the Star Wars and G.I. Joe a little boy could ask for, and I was supposed to be content with little pink princesses and Barbies. Which as a tomboyish kid was unappealing. He'd try to force me to wear pink girly things and would even tell me he'd have my mom make me wear them to school, which would never happen. Another thing he caused was that I was a pretty bad picky eater and his response was to physically place my toys in the trash unless I ate, which would only make me cry. He also wants me outside a restaurant because I wouldn't eat dinner. Now I don't disapprove the use of, but personally it was not an appropriate way to deal with the issue as even today I still have somewhat a fear of certain foods, mostly foods with uncased grounded meats like tacos and burgers to the point where my body will try to reject it even if I think it tastes good. His entitlement to my affections sort of started when I developed father-daughter relationship with my stepfather, Dan. He was at the time a biker, he stopped doing club stuff after he found out the brotherhood thing was all bullshit. Redneck guy my mom met at a bar. We moved in with him to his little ranch house the summer before first grade. He didn't want to be a dad, but was never about it, so everything was all great with the exception that my mom's happiness made Larry jealous. He had way more to offer on the basis of providing for us. A clean home out in the country, while my Larry was a slob wherever car he ever had would be filled with trash, he was also a bit of a drunk. One time I accidentally saw his tiny sticking out of his boxers while he was passed out in his bed, but I didn't think to tell anyone at the time. My mom would call CPS, but he would just make us clean the house just before the date that they told him they'd come, so nothing became of it, and apparently according to my brother who decided he wanted to continue playing both sides that he has gotten even worse, blossoming into a full-blown. One time when we were little Larry tried bribing some bikers from a different group thinking that you're a different club, so you guys are enemies, to hurt Dan, who luckily were actually his friends who told him about it. Which ended up in Dan beating the SHT out of Larry for because doing that would have put his own children in danger. Now my relationship with Dan didn't really build until I started taking interest in helping out in his shop and I brought back some of the things he loved in his abusive childhood. He basically grew up in an episode of H-Arters, which was anime. We started watching shows like One Punch Man, Trigun, Gundam, Dragon Ball, all that shone in SHT that he would have been made fun of at school for when he was a kid in his rural town. After a while I stopped going to Larry's, which he ended throwing a hissy fit threatening to take my mom to court even though I was at that age where I could technically choose according to my state's law. He tried guilt-tripping me into feeling bad for not going to see my half-sister that was caused by a one-night stand, who he now lives with. Which I honestly didn't care about, I just didn't want him to start a custody battle. After that I just used him to buy me stuff and played angsty teenager because FCK it, if he wants to play games I'll play. There were some things though I couldn't get from him. Like he wouldn't give money towards a vehicle I wanted because it was a Chevy that was not even a new one. It was in 2010 me and Dan fixed up that had a bad rear differential that we paid a little over $1,000 for that I still have. Dan has Chevys and Chevy parts so it would be easier to maintain whenever anything broke. Larry wanted his name on the title too, which my brother fell and now has no car because Larry decided he needed to take his son's instead of buying another after his broke down. What really showed me how much he cared has the last birthday party. Now my half-sister is almost exactly 10 years younger than me by a few days, so he thought it would be great to do a shared birthday. Which was really her party with my name attached to it. The only thing I got was a gift card he bought in front of me an hour before the party itself, which that screams I love you, but the relationship was dead anyways. And at the party itself I literally hid away in a closet to see how long it would take for someone to notice, and it honestly made me cry. Not because he didn't care about me, I was over that, but because he did a half job trying to convince other people he cared and refusing to just let me go. After that I finally got the excuse to not go anymore, yay COVID, but I still had to deal with some of his bullshit. Like he'd still try to pit me as a dependent in his taxes and that I'm still on his TRICARE health insurance plan that I didn't know about, which means that my asthma diagnosis, which would have been normally covered by my mother's Medicare, is being compromised by the fact that it's not a TRICARE approved hospital and now I owe them money I don't have.